What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matthew Moreno. Matt, some good news for Dodger fans. 3 starters in the All-Star Game for the first time in a long time. It feels like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez, all named All-Star starters. We're going to get to Will Smith's status as an All-Star. We're going to get to Clayton Kershaw's status as an All-Star, but let's start with the guys who are starting in the game. Pretty exciting stuff for the Dodgers to have 3 guys represented.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, a little surprising. I think, going into it, at least for me, Mookie was probably the safest bet just because he typically tends to do pretty well. And there's 3 outfielders that fans are voting for. So it's a little bit easier than just getting one player in. Freddie Freeman, not quite as surprising. He's obviously having a great season. He's had a great career with the Dodgers so far. And JD Martinez, honestly, I did not see this one coming at all. And even after, the first fan voting starts, and then after a week, they do a voting update, and he was ahead of Bryce Harper. And I thought, okay, maybe he's just off to a good start. Like, Phillies fans are pretty crazy. And so they'll probably start, voting and going nuts and to get Bryce Harper back into first place. But it just never happened. So credit to, Dodgers fans and all the other fans out there who may have been voting, not only for JD, obviously, but Mookie and Freddie as well.
The JD one's hilarious. I mean, we were, 2 months ago? People were like, this guy's a bust. Why are we signing him? What a waste. And now here he is starting the All-Star game. And look, I'm not saying JD Martinez is perfect. There's a lot of slug in the bat. Maybe some of the other batting average on base percentage numbers aren't quite what you would want. I think partly this is because of a weakened field for the designated hitter spot, as weird as that sounds. You mentioned Harper, who hasn't been able to stay healthy so far this season. But I'm with you. I mean, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, you can pretty much pencil in as starters every single year because of the name brand, but also because of the consistency. They're going to get both of those. They're going to get the casuals who see Mookie Betts' name and say, oh, yeah, he's one of the best players in the league, right? Freddie Freeman, he's one of the best players. And then the people that are actually following it are also going to be like, yes, he actually, to confirm, is the best right fielder, the best first baseman, etc. So those two, not surprising. I'm with you. JD was the surprise. I mean, where are you at on JD Martinez, just as a quick aside? Are you like, the first month was rough, the last couple months, now he's, I think, second in Major League Baseball, or at least in the National League in slugging percentage. Like, do you think where we've landed with JD Martinez, the first half that he has had thus far, is kind of a sustainable expectation moving forward?
I think it probably is. I think the only question for me that I'm not sure of is how streaky of a hitter he's going to end up being. I think we've seen that already in spurts. And so I this could end up being who he is, where, he's going to get really hot for basically 2 or 3 weeks. And then he might go through a slump for a week or two and then sort of stabilize and be, kind of at a normal level for another week or two, and then maybe take off again. And that's kind of the only question for me. But ultimately, I mean, one way or another, like, the Dodgers are certainly getting production and value for that offseason signing. And, at the DH spot, you'll take it.
It's hilarious looking at his Savant page real quick. I mean, there's a lot of dark red and there's a lot of dark blue. So 93rd percentile for average exit velocity, 95th for hard hit rate, 98th for expected slugging, 95th percentile for barrel rate. Elite, 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 elite. On the flip side, 10th percentile for strikeout rate, 16th percentile for walk rate, 7th percentile for whiff rate. So when there's contact, it's always loud contact and it's going a long way, but there's not always loud contact, and the walk rate leaves something to be desired. But 267 batting average for the folks that love batting average. The on-base percentage is kind of the one weak link, 310 there, but the 586 slugging percentage makes it all better. Let's talk catcher. Will Smith not voted in as a starter. Sean Murphy was, who Murphy led the first round of voting. He won the second round of voting. You indicated to me on our Clayton Kershaw show yesterday that you have some reservations about whether or not you think this is going to work out for Will Smith, who famously has not made an All-Star game quite yet. Give me your thoughts on why that is, why you're maybe hesitant to pencil him into to a plane ticket to Seattle.
Yeah, so now, obviously, for the All-Star Game reserves that are going to be unveiled Sunday afternoon, it's up to player vote. And my concern is, because we've seen it in the past, like, it's not a knock on Will Smith. He's a more reserved player, right? Like, just even with media, he's not necessarily, a brand name or a household name, I would say, right, across the country. So my concern is, are the players going to lean more towards somebody they recognize? JT Realmuto, even though, is it like more of a legacy pick type thing than maybe, Will Smith? I mean, let me make it clear. Will Smith is certainly deserving of an All-Star game bid this year. He has been in the past. He is again this season. I just am worried that the player vote may not break in his favor. And if it doesn't, then it could be trouble because then at that point, it's up to the commissioner's office to do the final picks. I forget how many it is. It might be 6, I think.
Yeah.
But some of those are pitchers as well. And then you also start to factor in each team needing to have a representative. And I know what we discussed on the Kershaw live video that's up. If anybody wants to go revisit that, is the Rockies could end up being a little bit of a wild card there if Diaz is who needs to represent them or who is chosen to represent them. So that's my concern, and admittedly, some of it could just be if you like
burned before.
Yeah, that Will Smith has yet to make an All-Star game. Like that's crazy, but
yeah,
we are.
Yeah, I take solace in the fact I joked with you. Ken Rosenthal did his predictions over at The Athletic. He said the NL catcher, Murphy and Smith, is the easiest position group in the entire exercise for him. So that's good news. To your point, I mean, look, Sean Murphy has had a better season than Will Smith, depending on what numbers you want to look at. From a wins above replacement perspective, Murphy's at 3.1, Smith is at 2.8. When you go down in the National League, the next best is William Contreras, who's almost a full win worse than Will Smith. Then you get to Elias Diaz, who I actually think is probably the greatest competition, even though he's only a 1.1 win player. The Rockies need somebody. I think it's going to be Ryan McMahon because third base is weak, but that's something to watch out. But I mean, you've got to go all the way down below Diaz to get to Real Muto, just a 1-win player this season, an OPS of like 764. So to your point, it's in the hands of the players now. It would be an absolute travesty and laughingstock if Will Smith were not named the second catcher in the National League. It's a slam dunk. But to your point, we've been burned before, we've been hurt before, and so we protect ourselves by not getting our hopes up here. Last conversation on the All-Star front. There was one more Dodger that you and I both expect to be named an All-Star. The question is whether or not that person will be playing in the All-Star game. That's Clayton Kershaw. Has been arguably the best pitcher in the National League so far this season, leads the National League in a number of categories, was Player of the Month in April. There's a very good chance he could win Player of the Month for June, Pitcher of the Month, excuse me. But the injury concerns linger. I would put this at like a 10% chance he pitches in the All-Star game. Would you go higher or lower than that number?
I think that's probably fair. And Kershaw when he was kind of detailing his shoulder inflammation, he said he was asked, do you view this as maybe an opportunity to go on the injured list, sort of take a break? And unsurprisingly, he said, if I'm healthy, I'm going to pitch. I want to pitch, which we expect out of him, right? That's his mentality. Yeah. That's, I think, what you want from any player. You don't want any player to say, yeah, I'm healthy, but let's take, a 2-week break right now, just, for the heck of it.
Yeah.
But as you and I discussed, and as I, kind of alluded to, hinted at, outright said, I'm skeptical that his shoulder issue is only necessarily inflammation and that he will avoid the IL. And I think, now is kind of the perfect time to just do it. And so because of that, I think we'll be looking at a situation where he's selected for an All-Star game, but doesn't pitch in it. And, it's unfortunate for the fans in some regard, but also, like I said, at least Kershaw finally got to make his All-Star game start. It fittingly came at Dodger Stadium last year. And so if he needs to, unfortunately, skip the Midsummer Classic this time around, so be it.
One other guy to keep an eye on, long shot for sure, but he's sort of, when you read these prediction pieces like the Rosenthal one up at The Athletic that I mentioned, there's like sort of the others under consideration. Evan Phillips is the other guy. And I'd be curious, you mentioned kind of how the players and coaches get involved. My guess is Evan Phillips' reputation in the game is far better than he is among sort of national media, national fans. Obviously, fans aren't voting on pitchers, but just something to keep an eye on there, especially if Kershaw is elected to the All-Star game and then isn't able to play. I wonder maybe they do sort of a solid and get his teammate in there in his place in Evan Phillips. But I wouldn't put the odds very high. I mean, probably right around that same 10% number, but just something to keep an eye on. It wouldn't be totally shocking to me if Phillips was recognized, because if we're talking about 5 or 6 relief pitchers in the National League that get named, he's in the group. Like, he's one of the best 5 or 6. He doesn't have the saves because the Dodgers don't use him that way. And so my hope is that when it's left up to managers and stuff, that would differ. The caveat to all that is some teams need representatives. Sometimes it's easiest to find a random relief pitcher to throw in as a representative for those teams. The bottom dwelling teams like the Padres, they've got to find somebody for them to put on the All-Star team. So we'll see what happens. But let us know what you think in the comments below. Again, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez named All-Star stars. By the way, Mookie Betts going to be in the Home Run Derby as well. I believe he said his goal is not to finish last. Do you think he accomplishes that goal, Matt?
I think so. I mean, I'd like to see the entire field first, but I can't imagine. I know, like, he expressed some concern. They asked him what he's worried about, and he said his height and weight. That there aren't many. I think 5'9",
Yeah,
170
true.
pound guys is what he pegged himself at participating in the Derby. But I think he'll be okay. I mean, last place that'd be tough. I don't anticipate this being the home run derby each year. Like, it's not necessarily a stacked group top to bottom, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's always some guys that you kind of look at that you're like, are they in it just because they needed somebody, or is it
Yep.
justified? And so I don't see a last place finish for him.
All right. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. That's Matthew Moreno. I'm Jeff Spiegel. Hey, tonight we will be live on Playback, and early start in Kansas City. So check us out, playback.tv/DodgerBlue1955. Bobby Miller trying to get things back on track. So make sure you check that out as well. We've got a Royals preview that will be up on our YouTube page as well with Jeff Erickson from RotoWire. So get yourself ready for the weekend series. Dodgers looking for a sweep to keep the momentum going. That's Matt Moreno. I'm Jeff Spiegel. As always, enjoy the rest of your day. And of course, go Dodgers.